Okay, guys, first things first. So today we're gonna do a lot of talking and a lot of chewing. And we're gonna talk about the Mustero
and stuff.
JK, we read your comments. It's not a Mustero, it's a Ranch-Tang.
Ranch-Tang.
And I agree, chewing gum and talking. Now that we got that out of the way, check this out. We got a standalone harness here from Warren Diesel. Warren Diesel, these dudes are OG, straight up. These guys build really nice stuff. They are 6.0 Power Stroke guys. And if you don't know who Warren Diesel is, go check them out. These dudes, it's not their first rodeo at all. So we talked to them. They're on board to help us out. And we got a standalone harness that we're going to run so that we can kind of free up some of the clutter that's on the motor and basically make the install easier. Steven is over here working on stripping all that electrical harness off of this thing. We're going to get the Fickum pulled off. Going to get the main harness pulled off this thing, get the fan and stuff. Basically all the stuff that is kind of peripheral extra. We just need to get it down to the bare minimum and see what it's going to take. We're going to try to leave as much metal as we can on the car because the car doesn't have a frame. It's kind of all of the pieces add up together to make the car rigid. And so we're going to try to leave as much material as humanly possible. We do have quite a bit of work to do on the firewall because the transmission on this thing is much, much larger, especially in the areas at the back of the block or the firewall where the up pipes and stuff are. Right here, this taper that's on this thing on the bell housing, the length of it and just the general size of this is bigger bottom and top, left and right, and total length than the little transmission that came out of this thing. So we've got little stuff like the master cylinder we pulled off. We got the tranny cross member that was in the car pulled out, and trying to make as much room as humanly possible without actually cutting into any of the structure of the car just yet. But yeah, we're fixing to get to that here in just a minute. Here we go. All right, guys, so made short work of that, and we've got everything that we don't need pulled off of this thing. Got the harness pulled off, all this other peripheral stuff off the back side of this. This is about as skinny as you can make a 6.0. Okay, so our original plan to cut this thing didn't take into consideration. First things first, we don't want to split the motor and the transmission. We want to be able to remove this as a unit for future repair because we're pretty certain we're going to blow some stuff up on this thing. So we just went with a test run to try to shoehorn this thing into the car, and you can tell actually that we've got a clearance issue to the pan right now. It's sitting, the cross member down there is touching the pan, and we've got it at a pretty severe angle. And from best I can tell, what we should do is just come straight across here. That way we can come in at the same angle and shoehorn the engine and transmission down in. So we've made a stencil of the profile of this bell housing. What we're gonna do is, because we can see roughly this seam is about the same height that we need, we're gonna center this thing up where the bell housing is, chop this piece down on either side and return it back square in the hopes that once we get that set inside the car, we can take that tunnel piece we've cut out, cut it down the center, and slide that piece out and be able to cope that and fill the center panel back in to make the doghouse. Okay, we are really close. Check this out. All right, so we got the trans set in here. We're damn near centered up. Got a floor jack under it so that we could shoehorn the backside of this in, because right now we've got a little less clearance to the pan, to the up pipes than we figured. So we're just gonna do a little bit of trimming, cut this backside piece out with the motor in the car, and maybe this stuff down here get a little bit of massaging, but at least we can set the weight on this thing. Look at this. We are really tight fit.
We said we were gonna stuff it in, right?
Yeah. Look at this, man. It clears the steering shaft like just barely.
Holy smokes. I shot my blade.
All right, guys, we have officially shoehorned that thing in there. Hey, bro. Booyah.
Great
What's
job.
up, dude? Straight up. We had to cut a bunch of stuff out to get it in there. Steven just got done sectioning the floor pan out a little earlier. You can see we got the tranny mocked up here on the backside, and the plan is to take, hopefully, this is the plan, but to take this piece and cut it down the center, and then use those pieces and slide them over and overlap the pan, trace the edges, and then fill that center panel in. Whether that works or not, we have no idea at this point. But check out the stance on this thing, dude. Dude, we don't have a radiator, an intercooler. We've got a few other accessories to put in this car, but honestly, we've got about 200 pounds of junk in the back. I think the car's gonna sit pretty money, dude.
Yeah, I'm surprised. I mean, it came in here a little nose high, but I was expecting to like shoot coils out when all the weight's set.
Yeah, and honestly, when you look down here, that stuff is sitting pretty good.
And we still got a little.
The rear shock is broken loose from the bottom, but the control arms are sitting, they're not completely flat, but they're close, which all of that is good. We've got clearance to the oil pan. Looks like we've got about 4.5, 5 inches there. That's gonna change up a little bit. Steven brought up a good point over here earlier about some clearance issue on the steering shaft. The column piece right there is a little bit tight to the manifold. We had to kind of last second saws all this stuff out to make a little clearance there. And we might have just a little bit too much tilt on the motor. But honestly, man, we've cleared the rack down here in the steering shaft from the manifold down. We're not touching the upper control arm pieces. We are gonna have to fab our motor mounts in and on either side still, but we've got the weight actually sitting on the pan, and we just used some 2x4s to mock that up, kind of like on Steven's Bel Air. Same kind of deal. Doesn't matter what you use, but you just got to make sure you got enough clearance to fabricate all the rest of the stuff to keep this thing where it belongs. Right now, we've got the crankshaft. We measured between the frame rails and checked it all out, and we're within about 1/4 of an inch of perfect center on this thing. Yep. So that's just about where the motor is going to go. That leaves us just enough to pull this thing back out after Matt is ugly to it. We're pretty certain we're going to do some head gaskets and a turbo and some other stuff on this thing in the future, but I don't know. I mean, the thing may prove to be pretty dang reliable. It doesn't weigh anything. We got a little bitty tire. So
we got a lot of motor.
Yeah, we got a lot of motor. We are going to lean on that thing, but I'm pretty confident this thing is going to do some serious shredding.
I think we have enough room there for the pedal.
It looks like the gas pedal is going to be a little bit tight, but I definitely think that if we just hug tight to this thing, we do have our transmission shift linkage, which is coming in here, and we may have to end up fabbing something up off the back side of this to push, you know, to get it through the gears instead of pull or whatever. But either way, none of that's going to be a big deal. Maybe we bend the brake pedal over or whatever, but there's going to be enough room for Matt to set in here. Steven and I talked about tying in across this thing because the car doesn't have an actual frame. It's got like a subframe piece that comes down, then you've got just empty floor pan and another subframe actually back here. So we're going to tie that stuff together across there and build something stout across here, specifically where the drive shaft stuff is. And we're gonna do some work on this tunnel as well, but we want to make sure that if a U-joint or a drive shaft comes apart in this thing, that we've got a loop to hold the drive shaft, some plate steel maybe, or some 3/16 or 1/4 inch where the U-joint unions are, because the last thing we want to do is have anybody get hurt. So we got that thing to set in there today. That was our goal for today, was to get the weight on the wheels so that we could see that the coil springs and stuff are going to work on the car. And honestly, I think the car looks sick, dude. It looks really, really cool. The hood's definitely not going to fit. There's no doubt about that. We set the fenders on just to get a rough idea, but you can see if you plane those fenders out, how much motor you've still got sticking up above that thing. So, yeah, there you go. Yeah, so the bottom of that level would be
where the hood is, basically.
So there's a good 10 inches or a foot of motor and turbo hanging out the top of this thing. Well, we set out what we came here to accomplish today. Got weight on wheels. Next time we're going to do motor mounts, figure out the brake system, drive shaft angle, some other little stuff like that. See you guys next time.
Ranch-Tang.
Later.